God is outside of time. And this is his story. So what happened? Alexander the Great is going through the Middle East, and he's on a killing, attack, conquest. He is conquering nation after nation after nation. Nobody can stand against him. He comes to Israel. Would you stand up? You're Alexander the Great. He comes to Israel, and the priests come out to him, and they bow down to him. What does that mean? Honor him. What's your reaction? Then they go to him. We've heard about you. We know who you are. They prophesy over you, and they bless you, and they tell you truths of your life. What's your reaction? Yes, what happens is Alexander the Great literally gets off his horse. He gets off his high horse. And he acknowledges these rabbis, these priests. He acknowledges what they know, their position. And he says, the only thing I want of you is I want you to write your Torah in Greek. And that's how we got the Septuagint. Septuagint 20 written by 70 rabbis. Okay. He's in love with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or he thinks he is. He's reading about it. He's researching. The Jews can do anything they want, and he will bless it. We are a favored and chosen people by him. Something starts to happen. If I give you a gift every time I see you, and I acknowledge you every time I see you, and I tell you what I like about you, and I support you every time I see you, what's your reaction going to be to me?
The same.
The same. Yeah. What does that mean for the Jewish people? They get interested in the ways of Alexander the Great. They get Hellenized. They become Greek. They get interested in his gods. They want to live life the way he lives it. He wants to know about them. They want to know about him. And we end up with this split in the Hebraic culture between those who are staying true to Torah and those who are following every newfangled thing that's coming down the pike. Sound like today? Mm-hmm. There's a split. And Israel is divided. Alexander the Great, after one of his conquests, gets so drunk, he dies either from alcohol poisoning or they poison the liquor. But he dies in a drunken party after one of his conquests. And his kingdom is divided into 4. The 2 that interest us are the king of the north from Daniel 9, that's the Seleucids, and from the south, the king of the Ptolemies, that's Egypt. And these are the 2, and you can follow the history of what happens if you read Daniel 9, because it's accurate. Everybody is still honoring the Jewish people until Antiochus IV. Antiochus IV was called Antiochus Epiphanes. He was from the northern kingdom. He was a Seleucid. Okay, so he wants people to like him. So he goes around, and he just meets people on the street. He just gives them money. He's just like, he's giving. He's giving. Everywhere he goes, he's giving. Not only that, he goes and stands in line with the people when they're paying their taxes for their businesses. And he pays taxes and gets a storefront. And people think he's out of his mind. Antiochus Epiphanes means the one who perseveres. Epiphanes, the word epiphany comes from it. It means God's revelation. So he thought he was God's revelation to mankind. And he was going to persevere to the end. Well, something happened with a man named Jason, who was high priest of the Israelites. And Jason apparently didn't appreciate something Antiochus Epiphanes did. Meanwhile, a man named Menelaus approaches him and says, I'd like to be the high priest, and here's a bunch of money. So Antiochus kicks out Jason, who was high priest, and puts in Menelaus. Now, high priests have always been chosen by God, or supposed to be. It followed a lineage that came down from Aaron. Now you have a secular Greek Seleucid general determining who's going to be high priest. Next thing that happens is Antiochus Epiphanes goes out to fight against Ptolemy, the king of the south again, right? And while he's out there doing that, Jason kicks out Menelaus, who runs away, and he takes back control of the temple. This is what Antiochus does. From the first Maccabees, book 5. When these happenings were reported to the king, he thought that Judea was in revolt. Raging like a wild animal, he set out from Egypt and took Jerusalem by storm. He ordered his soldiers to cut down, kill, without mercy, those whom they met, and to slay those who took refuge in their houses. There was a massacre of young and old, a killing of women and children, a slaughter of virgins and infants. In the space of 3 days, 80,000 people were lost. 40,000 met a violent death, and the same number were sold into slavery. That's his reaction. The temple of the living God was called the Temple of Jupiter Hellenius. It was turned into a place to worship Zeus and the place where pigs were slaughtered. He went into the Holy of Holies. That's the place where the Jewish people were allowed to go 1 time a year on Yom Kippur. He goes in there, he sets up an altar to Zeus, and he's slaying pigs. Antiochus sacrificed a great swine at the image of Moses and at the altar of God that stood in the outer courtyard, and sprinkled them with the blood of the sacrifice. He commanded likewise that the books by which they were taught to hate all other nations should be sprinkled with the broth made of the swine's flesh. This is written by a contemporary. And he put out the lamp called by them immortal, which burns continually in the temple. Lastly, he forced the high priest and the other Jews to eat swine's flesh. Okay. So this is the story of what's happening. And the people are in very, very deep grief. If you didn't choose to worship Zeus and eat pig's flesh, you would be slaughtered on the altar, which was supposed to be an altar to God. And they would, this matters for later in the story, they would slice you through in the belly area. So just remember that for later on in the story. They would call out the religious authorities, and they would make them worship Zeus and eat pig. And this continued until they came to the town of Modi'in. And there was a man named Mattathias. And this song, this thought of this song was strong in his mind. There was something better. And he was willing to lay down his life, no matter what the cost. And so the man comes from the Seleucids and says to him, "You're going to slaughter a pig on the altar." He says, "I sure am." The man goes, "What?" He says, "I sure am. I'm going to slaughter a pig on the altar. And then you're going to eat pig flesh." He says, "Well, I might do that, but I'm slaughtering the pig on the altar." And he says, "But I need your help, because I've never slaughtered a pig before. You've got to come and show me how I'm supposed to slaughter this pig on the altar." So he takes out his sword. And the other guy takes out his sword, I guess. They take out their sword or their knife or whatever it is going to do. And the guy's showing him what to do. And as he's showing him what to do, Mattathias turns around and he stabs him right through the belly. He says, "You're the pig on the altar." Then he stands up. And he says this. He was high priest, mind you. Mattathias was high priest. He stands up and he says, "My child, my relatives, and I will continue to keep the covenant that God made with our ancestors. With God's help, we will never abandon his law or disobey his commands. We will not obey the king's decree, and we will not change our way of worship in the least. All who are with me, come." He's got 5 sons. They come. Other people come. and they join. And now you've got this group of people, this ragtag group of people, priests. They don't know how to, I'm sure they didn't really know how to handle a sword. Priests who are up against the Syrian army. And they won't back down. 4 years pass. They fight for 4 years. During this time, Antiochus runs off to the Parthians to attack them in battle. And he's successful. He wins. And he's coming back victorious. He's left Lysias in charge of fighting the Maccabees, and this is what happens to him. But the all-seeing Lord, the God of Israel, struck him with an incurable and invisible blow. As soon as he stopped speaking, he was seized with a pain in his bowels, for which there was no relief, and with sharp internal tortures, and that very justly, for he had tortured the bowels of others with many and strange inflictions. Yet he did not in any way stop his insolence, but was even more filled with arrogance, breathing fire in his rage against the Jews, and giving orders to drive even faster. And so it came about that he fell out of his chariot as it was rushing along, and the fall was so hard as to torture every limb of his body. Thus he who only a little while before had thought in his superhuman arrogance that he could command the waves of the sea, and had imagined that he could weigh the high mountains in a balance, was brought down to earth and carried in a litter, making the power of God manifest to all. Remember, his name was Antiochus Epiphanes, God made manifest. So now he's making God's power manifest to all. And so the ungodly man's body swarmed with worms while he was still living in anguish and pain. His flesh rotted away, and because of the stench, the whole army felt revulsion at his decay. As this is happening, the Maccabees are fighting for the temple in Jerusalem. As the one thing happens, the other thing is happening, right? Mm-hmm. And they have to bury the altar because it had been used for all kinds of bad things, and build a new altar, and they clean out the temple. And according to tradition, they find one vial of clean oil. One little vial of clean oil. It should last for one day. And in all of the extraordinariness of what's going on, that one little vial lasts for 8 days. But that's not really the whole story, except it's amazing. Let me go back for a minute. One represents God coming to earth. God is one. God's spark of eternity births creation. It's one spark of eternity from one God that births all of creation. So one is the spark of the eternal, causing the earth and all of time-oriented reality to be created. 8 is eternity. So one starts time in motion. One begins the creative process of the earth, the world, the universe. And 8 establishes eternity on earth as it is in heaven. So what was supposed to last one day lasts 8. But that's not the full story of Hanukkah, because they had not been able to celebrate any of the Jewish feasts for 4 years. And all of a sudden they can. And Sukkot is the festival of Thanksgiving. Feast of Tabernacles, it's the festival of Thanksgiving. So they want to go back and celebrate Sukkot. And so what's written in the Maccabees is why this holiday is 8 days, it's because it's a second chance to celebrate Sukkot. Sukkot, we look at the glory of God's creation. This building is made so you can see the glory of God's creation around you at all times. Sukkot is a time when you feel the intimate presence of the God of the universe in your heart, living inside of you, protecting you. Your shoes don't wear out. You don't get old. It's like there's this presence of God who's transforming everything around you, and you can see it. And that's Sukkot. And that's why the holiday was celebrated for 8 days. There's another story that I will tell you after we hear a song about the victory. Because although Hannukah is this incredible victory of the good over the evil, we shall soon see. We shall soon see that arrogance and the pride and the lack of wisdom in that statement. And they had had this most amazing victory. They were priests. It says in Numbers 3 that the priests are from the tribe of Levi. It says in 2 Samuel 7, verse 16, that the rulers of Israel come from the tribe of Judah. They come from the line of David. Now you have a group of Levitical priests run by Maccabees. He's dead by now, but his 5 sons running the kingdom. The priest's job is to notice the sins of the people. It's to bring them to God. It's to hear the voice of God and bring it down to the people. It's not to have anything to do with the secular government. They are above the secular government. They comment and correct the secular government. They are to be listened to. And the secular government is supposed to control all the things in the world, right? Okay, so they call themselves interim rulers because nobody else is qualified to run Israel according to their idea. It's 160 BC. This is where it gets amazing. This is where the story of Hannukah becomes the story of Yeshua's birth. It's extraordinary what happens. This is 160 BC. We have Jerusalem, we have Judea. We are conquering more and more of Israel. We are gaining back land every year, it seems. But something's happening. 5 sons, one at a time, are slaughtered. You have the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. And they are learning, generation by generation, to make more concessions to the Seleucids, to the Romans eventually. And they're learning to cooperate with the nations around them and be a partner, and they fight in the wars for Rome. They go out and they fight for, they're choosing to be part of this world. And they're becoming exceedingly corrupt. We're now at the year 37 BC. Remember, Yeshua will say of them, do what they say, but don't do what they do. They have killed people to stay in power. They have married and divorced and murdered family members to stay in power. They are whitewashed tombs full of dead man's bones. They are speaking the words of Torah, and they are, as Yeshua said, following their father, who is now the devil. They have sold their souls. The priests are now calling themselves kings. They're no longer interim rulers. They're the kings. Out of this came the Pharisees. The Pharisees actually rose up in rebellion to the priests. The Pharisees were the scribes. They rose up in rebellion to the priests to try to restore order to Israel, because Israel was so out of order. So 37 BC, 2 brothers, great-grandchildren of, I think of Simon, who was one of the sons of Maccabees. They can't decide who's supposed to be ruler, and the Seleucids are bothering them again. So they go to Rome. They say, Rome, we don't know who should be in charge of us. You tell us who should be in charge of us. Which one of us do you think is better for the job? And will you protect us from the Seleucids? Rome says, I'm just the person for you. I know who's going to be your ruler. They go, really? Yeah. You know, he converted to Judaism. He's a Jew. Oh, no kidding. Yeah, but he's half Ishmaelite and half Edomite. Half a son of Ishmael and half a son of Esau. But he's converted to Judaism. His whole family is converted. No kidding. Who's this? Oh, he's a great builder. He'll restore the temple for you. He'll do amazing things for you. Really, who's this person? It's Herod the Great. The people who had conquered the Seleucids for making them become Hellenized have now put in office a man from Rome who's a complete sellout. So that you see what they've done. They've done 180 degrees. Now, 4 BC, we have the story of how this Herod the Great died. He died very much like Antiochus Epiphanes died, almost the exact same thing. Something consumed his genitals and consumed all of his digestive area, and you could see the worms crawling all over his body. Right, so what happened to him was absolutely gross and disgusting. But he had by then given birth to Herod the Tetrarch, who was now an adult. Herod the Tetrarch, now what did Herod the Great do to confirm that he should be the ruler in Israel? He married a Hasmonean princess. So he married into the Levitical line of the high priesthood of Israel. So Herod the Tetrarch was 1/2 Levitical priest, 1/4 Ishmaelite, 1/4 Edomite. All the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were represented in Herod the Tetrarch, which is the one with whom Yeshua would deal. Now look at the timing of Yeshua's birth. I've often wondered until God showed me this. It's like, why did you pick that year? Why didn't you come all the other times when people cried out for you? Because what happened? This incredible miracle. This incredible intensity of people to do the right thing, to be good and destroy the evil. This incredible passion of the heart to be successful as Jews, as followers of the living God, had to completely fail. We can't do it. We absolutely simply can't do it. We proved ourselves to be incapable of doing that. And then the one who was capable was born. This is the story of Hannukah. And this is the story of Yeshua's birth. We're all just like that. None of us can do it. And if we do it, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, somewhere down the line, we're not going to be able to stand for God no matter how much we try. And so that's why this was the moment when he brought his son into the earth. Now think about where Israel is at right now. Israel's fighting war after war after war after war after war after war. She's having victory after victory after victory after victory. Nobody can stop her. When she doesn't do it, God does it. He takes out the president of Iran. He causes Syria to fall apart. He's giving her back her land. He's giving her back his land. It's like the Maccabees. What will happen when Israel reaches the point where she's going to collapse into her own pride? She's going to collapse into her own desire to do everything in her own strength. She's going to forget, like Jeshurun, she's going to forget God who's behind her back. She's going to take one step too far. What's going to happen? That's Ezekiel 38:39. That's when the nations of the world coming from the north will come against her. And God will come again. This Hannukah could not be more significant as we go from Biden to Trump, as Netanyahu is on trial, as all these things are happening in the Middle East. We are at a point like where the Maccabees were when they stood up and said, who's with me? Who's with me? Who's going to walk this out with me? Who's going to follow? And the choice is before us to make room for the Seleucids, make room for the Romans, make room for the world, or stand for God without any equivocation, no matter what it costs. Mattathias and his 5 sons all lost their lives. But the victory that they gained was the victory that was required for Yeshua to come. We are walking into such a moment in history, and he will come again. And that's the story of Hannukah. So when you see people celebrating the lights, they're celebrating the victory. When you see us, there's a dreidel that we spin. Oh, I have to just tell you this. Listen to this. This is the craziest thing in the world. I have to tell you this. The number 358. Okay, numbers mean something in Hebrew. It's the number of Mashiach, that's Messiah. It's the number, if you add the letters together, that's what this means. It's the number of the light of the world. It's the number of your Redeemer. It's the number of Shiloh coming. It's the number of the snake. And it's the number of, the Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, and the Lord will reign forever. 358 is all of those, and it's the number of all the letters on the dreidel. If you've seen that, we play this game with a dreidel, and you do it for golden chocolate coins or money, little bits of money, and a miracle happened here, if you're in Israel, or a miracle happened there. It's the 4 letters on each side. You get or you lose something depending upon each one, but they represent the 4 kingdoms of the world. And the thing that spins it represents God. All the kingdoms are going to fall away. It's just a dreidel game. And what's left is the authority of the living God who spins. Lord God, I thank you that your Son came. I thank you for the blessing of his birth and his incarnation. I thank you for the fullness of everything he has to bring to this earth now and every day. I thank you for causing us to be ready to receive your Son. I thank you that his answer is yes and amen, and it is love. Bless us, Lord, to understand how the roots of the Christian faith inform the Christian faith